The sun glinted off the polished obsidian glass towers of Megalopolis Nile, a sprawling, verdant city that stretched along the great river like an emerald serpent. Its vast, integrated pneumatic tube systems whistled softly as automated capsules ferried citizens and cargo. Beneath, intricately designed footpaths and elevated pedestrian thoroughfares pulsed with silent throngs. There were no broad avenues designed for galloping steeds, no stable districts, no grand equestrian statues. It was May 2025, and this was a world where a fundamental aspect of human history was conspicuously absent. Horses were never domesticated. The pivotal divergence occurred in prehistory around 4000 BCE. In this reality, the wild equids of the Pontic-Caspian steppe, more skittish, fiercely territorial, or susceptible to a particularly aggressive disease, simply resisted all attempts at domestication. Early human efforts to harness their strength invariably failed, leading societies to abandon the endeavor. The vast, thundering herds remained truly wild, beautiful specters of the plains, forever beyond human control. This great absence, as historians termed it, shaped everything. Without the speed and endurance of mounted warriors or the efficiency of horse-drawn chariots, early migrations were slower and empires harder to forge and maintain. Human ingenuity, denied the horse, found other avenues of development driven by absolute necessity. For millennia, the lack of horsepower profoundly reshaped human civilization. Long-distance land travel relied primarily on human endurance, oxen, and donkeys, spurring unprecedented innovation in infrastructure. Extensive networks of well-maintained, wide footpaths and paved roads crisscrossed continents, designed for the quiet efficiency of human and ox cart movement. Canal systems flourished, linking major river basins and internal seas, becoming the superhighways for trade and communication. Early development of advanced sailing technologies meant maritime trade dominated intercontinental relations from a much earlier period, fostering powerful naval empires and intricate trade wind routes that were meticulously charted and understood. Battlefields, devoid of thunderous cavalry charges, were instead dominated by highly disciplined and exceptionally trained infantry. The concept of swift, decisive mounted attacks was absent, leading to a different kind of warfare. Armies relied on grueling foot marches, elaborate logistics carried by oxen or human porters, and the strategic mastery of terrain. Fortifications and siege warfare became even more critical, leading to towering, intricate defensive structures and sophisticated siege engines. Empires tended to be smaller, more concentrated, or primarily maritime powers whose reach was limited by sea and vessel speed. When gunpowder eventually came, it further cemented the dominance of infantry and artillery, making battlefield mobility a constant, unsolved problem that pushed mechanical innovation even harder. Agriculture, too, followed a different path. Oxen and donkeys remained the primary draft animals, making farming a more labor-intensive and slower process. This led to different patterns of land use, often smaller, more intensely cultivated plots, and possibly more decentralized agricultural communities. These communities focused on maximizing yields through sophisticated crop rotation, soil management, and early mechanized tools. Trade was more localized, reliant on waterways, or involved arduous overland journeys that fostered strong regional economies. The speed of information transfer was significantly slower, affecting the pace of political decision-making and the spread of new ideas, sometimes leading to more isolated cultural pockets. Steppe peoples, unable to tame horses, adapted by relying heavily on domesticated reindeer in the north and hardy Bactrian camels in the central and southern plains. While effective in their environments, these animals lacked the sheer speed and agility of horses, leading to less expansive and rapid nomadic migrations. Their empires, like a hypothetical camel empire of the Eurasian steppes, would have been less sudden and far-reaching than the Mongol Empire of our timeline, focusing more on trade routes and fortified oases rather than lightning conquests. Global exploration and interaction also unfolded differently. Overland routes for large-scale exploration were far more arduous and perilous. This meant maritime powers played an even more crucial role in connecting continents, pushing the boundaries of navigation and ship design. The discovery of new lands would have been slower and more cautious, possibly leading to less aggressive colonization and more balanced, respectful interactions with indigenous populations due to the inherent difficulty of rapid military deployment and reinforcement across vast distances. The absence of the horse also profoundly shaped societal structure and culture. Without distinct aristocratic warrior classes built around cavalry, social hierarchies might have evolved differently, perhaps placing a greater emphasis on physical endurance, the meticulous art of walking, or the collective effort of communities. Different sports, cultural narratives, and artistic expressions emerged, often celebrating the human body's capabilities, the majestic grace of sailing vessels harnessing the wind, or the unwavering steadfastness of oxen pulling the plow. The concept of freedom might have been associated with open roads and endless footpaths rather than the boundless gallop of a horse. In May 2025, lead urban planner Anya Sharma, a woman whose thoughtful eyes often held the distant look of a philosopher, ran her hand over the holographic schematic of Sector 7, a newly proposed residential zone within Megalopolis Nile. The design emphasized integrated green spaces, decentralized utility hubs, and multimodal pedestrian pathways connected seamlessly to the city's pneumatic heart. There were no dedicated vehicle lanes for personal transport, only discrete maintenance access for automated communal vehicles. The population density projections for this sector are within parameters, Anya, reported her AI assistant, Nihilus. But the flow simulations for the dawn commute remain challenging without a central rapid transit nexus. Projected efficiency is 78.3%, below the acceptable threshold of 85%. Anya sighed. Her work was a constant balancing act between cold, hard efficiency and the inherent human need for connection, all within the constraints of a world that had never known the swiftness of a horse. Nihilus, with its unerring logic, couldn't grasp the subtle nuances of human movement when historical data sets were skewed by such a fundamental absence. The bottleneck in Sector 7, a subtle, almost imperceptible drag in pedestrian flow, defied easy explanation by conventional metrics. It was as if the very fabric of human interaction was subtly different, conditioned by millennia of slower movement. Anya believed humanity, unburdened by reliance on another species for speed, had perhaps moved slower, but also more thoughtfully, fostering more robust local communities and deeper connections to the land. The historical models for urban growth, Anya murmured, tapping a key on her console, always implicitly assumed a certain pace of idea and goods dissemination, a tempo only truly achievable with equine speed. That's the ghost in the machine, isn't it, Nihilus? It's led to these subtle, unexplored bottlenecks in modern planning. Insufficient data on a comparative timeline, Nihilus responded. The logical parameters for a non-equine-influenced historical development are too broad for a precise correlation. The current pedestrian throughput for Sector 7 is projected to result in an average commute time increase of 12.7% during peak hours, impacting productivity and citizen satisfaction. Productivity and satisfaction are just proxies for connection, Nihilus, Anya countered, leaning closer to the holographic display. If people feel isolated, if their interactions are hampered by inefficiencies, the city itself suffers. This isn't just about traffic flow. It's about the very fabric of society. She remembered an old, almost forgotten theory from the early pedestrian age, the pulse of the path. It posited that the speed at which humans traversed a space influenced the density and quality of their social interactions. In a world without horses, human networks had to be far more deliberate, far more intricately woven. Perhaps the solution wasn't a central rapid transit nexus, but an even more decentralized, more fluid network of pathways designed not just for transport, but for the inherent human tendency to linger, to connect. Nihilus, initiate a reevaluation of all Sector 7 pathways. Prioritize micro-connectivity and variable flow rates based on observed human psychological patterns during peak pedestrian movement. Cross-reference with historical studies of ancient walking markets and canal-side bazaars. Focus on desire lines and social friction points, rather than just direct trajectories. Anya needed to look back at the earliest adaptations, before the grand designs of Megalopolis Nile, to understand the fundamental human rhythm of a horseless world. She considered the air current simulations for cargo drones and colossal automated sailing vessels that silently traversed the oceans. This world had effortlessly crossed vast oceans without relying on arduous overland marches. That difference, she realized, explained why their initial encounters with other continents had been less aggressive, more cautious, the nobility of sails against the brute force of a cavalry charge. There was a certain grace, a certain patience in this world's expansion, born from profound necessity. Some still mourn the lost speed horses might have brought, Anya mused aloud, her fingers dancing over the holographic controls, adjusting algorithms, tweaking simulations. But I know that very absence forced us to look up, to the wind, to the rivers, and deep within ourselves to find other ways. Her city was a masterpiece of pedestrian civilization, a testament to a world where speed was once defined by the unwavering endurance of oxen and the intricate ingenuity of canals. The memory of the first successful steam-powered land trains emerging from the European mechanist guilds by the 17th century glowed in her mind, true invention blossoming from the sheer need for faster terrestrial movement. They couldn't rely on four legs, they had to build the future, brick by laborious brick, step by determined step. The dawn commute wasn't just a logistical puzzle, it was a philosophical statement. Anya saw it as a reflection of humanity's true spirit in this timeline, resilient, innovative, and deeply, fundamentally connected to the ground beneath their feet. The future of Megalopolis Nile, and indeed much of this world, rested on the efficiency of human feet and the boundless ingenuity of human minds, forever adapted to a life without the gallop of a horse. Anya, with her unique blend of historical understanding and urban planning prowess, was determined to ensure that every step taken in her city was a step towards a more thoughtful, more connected future. She wasn't just building a city, she was nurturing a civilization. The weeks that followed were a blur of activity. Anya's team, initially hesitant about the radical shift in design philosophy, quickly embraced the challenge. The first phase of redesign in Sector 7 began with the widening of key pedestrian arteries, carving out small, sun-drenched plazas where automated kiosks offering everything from fresh produce to artisan crafts could materialize. Pneumatic tube exits were re-angled, guiding commuters directly into these newly formed communal spaces. Bioluminescent flora, chosen for its calming patterns and subtle directional cues, was integrated along pathways, encouraging a more natural, unhurried pace. Anya spent many mornings on site observing. She saw families lingering in the new plazas, children playing near water features, and neighbors exchanging greetings as they paused by a blooming lumina tree. The flow was indeed slower, but it wasn't congestion, it was life. The automated sensors, once registering efficiency dips, now showed an increase in what Nihilus termed positive social interaction metrics. The frequency of impromptu conversations, the duration of shared public space use, the density of localized trade. One evening, director Elias Thorne met Anya in one of the newly activated plazas. The soft glow of the lumina trees cast long shadows, and the gentle murmur of human voices filled the air. Children's laughter echoed from a nearby play area. "Planner Sharma," Thorne began, his voice softer than usual. "The initial reports from Sector 7 are positive. Citizen satisfaction has risen by 5% in the first 2 weeks, exceeding your initial projections." Anya smiled. "The micro-pauses are working, Director. People are feeling less rushed, more connected. The psychological drag has lessened." Thorne nodded, looking around. "It's different. It feels warmer." I admit I was skeptical. Our entire urban planning philosophy has been built on speed and directness. To intentionally introduce elements that slow things down seemed counterintuitive. It's counterintuitive only if you measure efficiency solely in kilometers per hour, Anya replied. Our ancestors understood that true efficiency in a world without horses was about maximizing human potential, not just human movement. It was about forging stronger bonds to compensate for the vast distances. You speak of this great absence as if it were a defining gift, Thorn mused, his gaze thoughtful. Perhaps it was, Anya responded, looking up at the polished obsidian towers that reached for the sky. It forced us to look inward, to innovate in ways we might never have considered. We built colossal sailing vessels that tame the oceans, and land trains that crisscross continents with unprecedented speed, all because we had to. And here, in our cities, we're learning again to value the rhythm of our own steps, the strength of our own communities. The implications of Anya's work began to ripple beyond Sector 7. Other districts, facing similar subtle dips in public morale despite high transit efficiency, started requesting consultations. Historians and sociologists from across Megalopolis Nile sought out Anya, eager to discuss her unique perspective on the intersection of ancient history and modern urban design. Her theories on the pulse of the path and the social friction points began appearing in academic journals, sparking wider debate. The success of Sector 7 propelled Anya into a new role within the urban planning department. She became a key figure in the Human-Centric Design Initiative, a citywide program aimed at reevaluating urban spaces through the lens of historical pedestrianism. This wasn't just about redesigning physical spaces, it was about shifting cultural perception. One day, Anya met with Alara Vance, a renowned ethnobotanist whose work focused on biophilic urban integration. Alara, with her hands often stained with soil and a keen eye for the subtle language of living systems, had been a quiet advocate for a similar philosophy. Your work in Sector 7, Anya, Alara said, as they walked through a newly planted vertical garden in a public square. It speaks to something ancient within us. We've always moved with the earth, our feet feeling its contours. My studies show that where people walk more slowly, they notice more of their environment. They appreciate the green spaces, the art installations, the subtle changes in light and shadow. Exactly, Anya agreed, gesturing towards a group of elderly citizens performing synchronized movement exercises, a popular form of meditative physical culture. When speed isn't paramount, perception deepens. The mind isn't just focused on getting from A to B. It can wander, observe, create. This slower pace, Anya realized, manifested in countless ways across Megalopolis Nile. The city's famous storyteller hubs, small open-air amphitheaters embedded within pedestrian thoroughfares, were always filled. Citizens would spontaneously share anecdotes, recite poetry, or engage in philosophical debates, their voices amplified by subtle acoustic enhancers. Without the constant rush, there was time for reflection, for oral traditions to thrive. The great absence had not only shaped their physical world, but their very cognitive landscape. Without rapid mounted communication, information, particularly complex ideas, spread more slowly in the past. This fostered a culture of meticulous record-keeping, deep contemplation before action, and profound respect for consensus. Decisions in government were often made through lengthy public discourse in vast, open forums, where orators honed their craft not for quick persuasion, but for sustained logical argument. Anya saw this reflected even in the city's approach to education. Learning was often experiential, involving extensive foot journeys through historical districts, interactive walking tours of industrial complexes, and apprenticeships that emphasized gradual mastery. There was less emphasis on rote memorization for quick recall, and more on integrated understanding developed over time, much like a long journey on foot. She also noted the subtle differences in their popular entertainments. While vibrant holographic spectacles and complex pneumatic-powered games existed, many traditional sports revolved around endurance, precision walking, and team-based obstacle courses designed to test human strength and cooperation rather than brute speed. The river games, where highly skilled human-powered scullers navigated intricate canal mazes, drew massive crowds, celebrating the grace and power of the human body in direct communion with water. Director Thorne, watching Anya's progress, became one of her staunchest allies. He commissioned a comprehensive historical study to fully understand the long-term societal impacts of the Great Absence. The findings revealed startling insights: lower instances of chronic stress-related illnesses in historical pedestrian societies, higher rates of localized innovation driven by immediate community needs, and a deeply ingrained communal spirit born from shared physical effort. "It seems, Planner Sharma," Thorne remarked during a private review session, "that our ancestors, in their limitation, discovered something profoundly liberating. They weren't bound to the demands of a beast, but to the rhythm of their own being." Anya nodded. "And perhaps we, in our advanced mechanics, are finally learning to listen to that ancient rhythm again. We've built a city that moves at the speed of human connection, not just human conveyance. The future of Megalopolis Nile isn't about escaping our past, but embracing its unique gift." The final phase of Sector 7's redesign was approved with overwhelming support. Other cities, from the great canal cities of Europa to the aerial metropolises of the Asian highlands, began to study Megalopolis Nile's pioneering work, recognizing the deep wisdom in realigning urban planning with humanity's fundamental, unmounted nature. Despite the sweeping success of the human-centric design initiative, Anya knew their work was never truly finished. Megalopolis Nile was a living, breathing entity, constantly evolving. Her latest challenge lay in the oldest part of the city, the Central Weave, a densely packed labyrinth of historical pathways and ancient structures. While beautiful, its organic growth over millennia made it a prime candidate for social friction points. Specifically, a critical section known as the Market Confluence, where multiple ancient trade routes intersected, was showing signs of strain. It wasn't about speed, it was about emotional overwhelm, a low-level hum of anxiety registered by neural monitors worn by citizens. "The Market Confluence presents a unique challenge, Nihilus," Anya mused, reviewing the neurological data. "It's not just a physical bottleneck, but a cognitive one. Too many stimuli, too many spontaneous interactions, causing subtle distress. The very thing we are promoting elsewhere is overwhelming here. The data indicates a 15% increase in baseline cortisol levels among regular commuters through the confluence," Nihilus confirmed. "The density of spontaneous encounter has exceeded optimal parameters for this particular zone." Anya remembered a story from her childhood, a folktale about a merchant who got lost in the labyrinthine alleys of the old city, finding enlightenment not by reaching his destination, but by surrendering to the flow. The key, she realized, wasn't to force a path, but to guide the experience. Her proposal for the Market Confluence was nuanced. Instead of widening pathways, which was impossible due to ancient structural integrity, she suggested introducing sensory refocus nodes. These were discrete architectural interventions, a series of small sound-dampened alcoves with calming light projections and subtle aromatic diffusers positioned at key points. They were not to stop traffic, but to offer a brief, optional respite, a moment of sensory recalibration. Alongside these, she proposed dynamic holographic displays that subtly guided pedestrians to less crowded routes, appearing only when the confluence neared its capacity, offering suggestions like discover the aroma garden pathway or explore the artisan's alley. She presented her plan to Director Thorne. He listened intently, his gaze thoughtful. "You seek to manage the very flow of human thought, Planner Sharma, a bold undertaking." "It's about respecting the human experience, Director," Anya replied. "Our history taught us resilience, but it also taught us the importance of subtle cues, of reading the environment. We don't have horses to gallop through crowds. We navigate with empathy and foresight. The confluence isn't a problem to be solved with brute force, but a delicate ecosystem to be nurtured." Thorne approved the pilot program. Anya watched, with a mix of anxiety and anticipation, as the sensory refocus nodes were installed. Within weeks, the cortisol levels in the Market Confluence began to drop. People instinctively used the alcoves, pausing for a moment before re-entering the bustle. The dynamic holographic guides, far from being annoying, became trusted companions, subtly dispersing crowds and encouraging exploration of previously overlooked side paths. The market confluence retained its vibrant energy, but the underlying hum of stress dissipated. One brisk morning, Anya walked through the confluence herself, feeling the familiar energetic pulse. But now, a calming undertone. She saw an elderly man, his face serene, emerge from an alcove, take a deep breath, and continue on his way, a faint smile playing on his lips. She knew then that the great absence hadn't deprived humanity of anything truly essential. Instead, it had sharpened their senses, deepened their connections, and ultimately made them more profoundly human. The quiet hum of Megalopolis Nile, once a symbol of relentless progress, now felt like a contented sigh, a world breathing in sync with its own slow, deliberate heart. Anya Sharma, the urban planner who saw ghosts in the city's flow, had not just redesigned a sector, she had rekindled a forgotten truth about their unique civilization, nurturing its very soul, one thoughtful step at a time. Her work was a testament to a world shaped not by what it gained, but by what it learned to do without, finding strength and connection in every deliberate stride. This was a world that walked its own path, steadily, thoughtfully, into a future forged by its unique past.